All right, so you've made your choice on a point source speaker or a line array speaker. Good. What's the next thing you need? Well, you got to power it. There's two different methods of powering your speaker. There's passive speakers that have an external amplifier and active speakers that have a built-in amplifier into the speaker. Now, depending on the manufacturer you work with for certain systems, they may offer an option for one or the other or both. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for and also the manufacturer. So let's talk about passive speakers for a minute. So passive requires an external amplifier to work. And the reason why is because the speaker cabinets usually for passive systems are literally just a wood cabinet with these speaker cones in them, and that's it. You need an amplifier to take the signal from your board, crank it up to 11, and then send it to those speakers. Now, the beauty of using external amplifiers is that you can place the amplifiers where you need them to be, so that way you can access them at all times, versus an active speaker where the amplifier is up in the air usually if it's flown in the air, or if it's on a speaker stand, it makes it really hard to get to. The cool thing about passive speakers is that you have that option to choose where your amplifier goes and the type of amplifier you get and some features that can come with it. So you can actually place that amplifier where you need it to be, and then you can control the volume output of those amplifiers on the ground. So you can usually actually have someone at the amplifier, if not have it next to you at front of house, where you can control the volume level and find what works best. Now, if you're working with active speakers, the convenience factor here is that it's all in one. There's no separate unit. There's no doubling of the wiring because you got to run everything from front of house to an amp and then an amp to your speaker. It's just front of house to speaker. And a lot of times too, the amplifiers are perfectly matched for that speaker cabinet. Take for example, QSC. All of QSC's active speakers, which are really popular, the K series is a great popular point source system. They all have built-in amplifiers. So it's really plug and play. You plug everything in, you turn it on, and then you just set your output level to what you need it to be. Now, the cons of that is that, again, if it's flown in the air, you're not gonna be able to really easily get to it. Now, if you're working with some higher end speakers, for example, Meyer Sound Labs does this. If you use their speakers, they actually have the ability to remote control functions of the amplifier, such as the gain, over a Wi-Fi network if you have it wired up for that. So passive and active speakers, which one do I recommend? Well, it kind of depends again. If you're a portable church and you're setting up constantly and tearing down, active speakers are gonna be the way to go. You see, they're really easy to set up and tear down every weekend. They're really easy to get them dialed in and kind of have it ready to go for every set you do. And they're usually less expensive than their counterparts. That said, if you've got a home for your church, then the question kind of becomes more of what's your style and preference? Are you someone who's gonna be okay with setting it and forgetting it and never touching your amplifiers again? Or are you gonna be someone who actually wants to have control of the amplifier output? That's really up to you. Me personally, I'm kind of a set it and forget it because I want to make sure that my sound system is tuned correctly before I even start mixing. So I'll take the time before I ever start mixing to make sure my system is tuned properly and set up and good to go. And then after that, once I've done my initial tuning on my system, I'm not going to touch it again because I know it's working where it needs to be. So from then on out, I usually don't touch the system until I need to do a retune or things just don't seem right, which is usually about every 6 to 12 months, if that. Usually it's more. So that part comes down to personal preference. It may also come down to some other features that you may be interested in. And lastly, it's really going to depend on the manufacturer you work with. Some companies have both options, others don't always have one or the other. For example, QSC has both passive and active speakers. Even line arrays they have active. Versus someone like Meyer Sound Labs, again, they only do powered speakers, mainly because that's what they're comfortable with. They love to match their amplifiers with their speakers and they pride themselves on that. So it's just going to depend on the manufacturer you work with. So at the end of the day, really, it comes down to those kinds of things. So talk with the manufacturer, or if you're working with a representative from either a sales company or an installation company, talk with them about these kinds of things and get to know from your representative what their experiences are, what they think, and might work best for your scenario. Because your scenario will be specific to you and you need to know what the best choice is for your space.